He posted a video giving his mum $100,000 in cash. At first she refused, but he said, if I don't give it to you, I don't have a viral video.
It's 2023. A young man is lying down in a black suit. A fly lands on his cheek and he doesn't bother swatting it away. It's the first living thing he's seen in days.
That's because our man is lying in a glass coffin buried under 20,000 pounds of dirt. From a walkie-talkie, a group of excited young men tell him he's just hit 200 million subscribers.
He turns to the camera and says, Verizon 5G home internet is exactly what it sounds like. It's wireless internet for your home.
And with that one line, he's made $1 million. But that is pocket change for this first YouTuber billionaire.
Welcome to Good Bad Billionaire from the BBC World Service. Every episode, we take a billionaire and we find out how they made their money.
We take them from zero to their first million, and then from $1 million onto $1 billion.
My name is Zing Singh, and I'm a journalist, author, and podcaster.
And I'm Simon Jack. I'm the BBC's business editor.
And on this episode, we have someone who, I have to admit, initially passed me by when they became quite so famous.
I think that's right. I mean, this was a whole category of things you can do to make money that once upon a time didn't exist. And the first time I became aware of it was when I became aware of how big YouTube was becoming and how many viewers it had. And I asked friends and family, I said, what are people watching on YouTube? And back came the answer.
It's the YouTube channel Mr. Beast. Well, Jimmy Donaldson's YouTube channel is the most popular YouTube channel on earth. It's got almost 500 million subscribers.
He's been described as the Mozart of the attention economy. And he once said, once you know how to make a video go viral, it's just about how to get as many out as possible. You can practically make unlimited money.
He is currently worth $2.5 billion, according to Fortune magazine, although there is some debate over this, which we will get into.
His YouTube channel is known for extreme personal stunts, like being buried alive for 7 days, the game show style content with prizes of millions of dollars, homes, cars, even a private island.
And he's also known for videos where he gives huge sums of cash to those in need. But his charity for content model has made people wonder, is this just a billionaire who's just reshaping capitalism?
Yeah, some people have called it charity porn. He's just monetizing charity to ultimately sell more adverts.
Well, let's understand who Mr. Beast, aka Jimmy Donaldson, really is.
James Stephen Donaldson, nicknamed Jimmy, of course, was born in 1998 in Wichita, Kansas, USA. His parents are both in the military when he was young, so he was looked after by au pairs, nannies for much of the time. He's the middle child of 3 siblings, and as a child, the family moved 3 times around the southern United States. So according to his mother, Sue, there were no cousins, no aunts, no uncles. It was really just us.
Jimmy's parents split up in 2007, right when he was around 8. Sue actually wrote a book about the domestic abuse she says she experienced, which his dad, Charles, hasn't publicly commented on. And Jimmy won't discuss his father in the media, but he has no longer any contact with him. Sue retired from the military, and the family moved to Greenville, South Carolina, where she headed up the Reserve Officers Training Course at the university.
Yeah, Jimmy attended a local Christian private school. It was conservative. Punishment for bad behaviour was writing out Bible verses. He has described himself as an introvert. He often talks about how difficult he finds casual conversation, which is kind of weird for what he does. He didn't have many friends, he says, and rarely went out with other kids on the weekend. But he loves sport, especially baseball. And around age 15, though, he was diagnosed with Crohn's disease, an autoimmune inflammatory bowel condition. That meant he had to drop out of playing sport, so more time inside at home.
And he spent a lot of time indoors on his computer on YouTube. So as this whole episode is about how to get rich and getting rich off YouTube, let's do a quick kind of potted history of the platform. So YouTube was founded in 2005 as a site for sharing videos uploaded by users, and it adopted the slogan, broadcast yourself. And through the late 2000s, a lot more people were spending their time online. It grew really rapidly.
And Google came in and bought it for $1.65 billion. And everyone at that time, I remember thinking, gosh, that seems a lot of money for something which is basically people just posting videos of themselves. But I can tell you right now that conservative estimate of what YouTube is worth is something like $500 billion, like $500 billion. It's one of the most successful platforms ever invented.
And it's funny because I remember when YouTube first came out, the overall vibe that it had was sort of, do you remember that TV show, America's Best Home Videos?
Yes.
Where people would send in home videos of their auntie falling flat on her face after Thanksgiving, that kind of thing, like goofy stunts.
Bloopers.
Bloopers, yeah. And I do remember people saying at the time, how much is this going to be worth? This is literally just a single television show's worth of material on the internet.
Yeah, but it's got a very interesting economic commercial model. Basically, YouTube gives channels 55% of their ad revenue. It keeps the other 45%. And initially, only a few high-profile channels could monetize their videos. But within a few years, there was a whole new wave of creators who post videos and turned posting videos into the job that we know it is today. This is not the first time we've come across this sort of thing. And what's amazing is that all these creators, they're all posting their own content. And they're all inadvertently working for Google, in a sense, because that money goes to YouTube, which goes to Google.
Well, by 2010, Justin Bieber was releasing his song Baby. YouTube was becoming recognized as a legitimate pipeline to creating pop stars. At the same time, there was a new kind of star being created. A YouTuber called PewDiePie launched his channel in 2010, commentating on people playing video games. And at the start of 2013, this creator had 4 million subscribers. By the end of the year, he had 20 million. He was the most subscribed to YouTube channel.
And this is the world that Jimmy grew up in. He was a fan of PewDiePie. At age 11, he uploaded his first videos of himself playing Minecraft and Call of Duty. Age 13, he started a new channel which he called Mr. Beast. He tried video game commentary, which seems nuts to me, but I know it was incredibly popular. And then he made videos estimating how much money YouTube has made. Quite interesting. He made hundreds of videos with minimal traction. But Jimmy has been described, those that know him, as obsessive. And with sport no longer an option because of his Crohn's disease, he turned his fixation into YouTube and how it works.
After graduating from school in 2016, Jimmy enrolled in Pitt Community College, but he didn't actually go to classes. Instead, he thought that by studying YouTube, he could understand its algorithm and learn the secret to viral hits. And his Worst Intros series of videos poked fun at other YouTuber introductions and how they introduce themselves on video. It proved relatively popular and very meta. And he got his first check from YouTube when his channel, Mr. Beast, crossed 10,000 subscribers. But, this was barely more than pocket money at the time. Still, Jimmy continued experimenting. He slowly made incremental gains in subscribers.
Yeah, and then he did something that quite a lot of our billionaires did. He told his mum he wanted to drop out of college and pursue YouTube full time. She told him that if he wasn't studying, he had to move out. So he did. At this point, he had around 250,000 subscribers. He wasn't making much from the adverts, enough to scrape by, though. So he moved into an apartment with friends who were similarly YouTube obsessed. And Jimmy said that for a few years, he was just relentlessly, unhealthily obsessed with studying virality. Important word here. Studying the YouTube algorithm.
Their research, Jimmy and his friends, was almost scientific. So they would take, for instance, thousands of thumbnails from YouTube, which is the kind of little image you see that acts as the cover for the video, to see if there was a correlation to the brightness of the image to how many views it would get. So for videos that got over 10 million views, they would count how often they would cut the camera angles.
That's so interesting, because one of the things I noticed about watching some of the videos for this, it's the number of cuts, the use of animation, how long you stay on a single frame. It's a blizzard of visual stimulus. In January 2017, he released a video called I Counted to 100,000. That's exactly what it sounds like. He actually sit there for 40 hours. And at the end, he looks deliriously at the camera and says, what am I doing with my life?
It's almost a bit like performance art in a way.
Yeah, it is. And it got 6.5 million views in a week. I mean, you said it calls it performance art. It's sort of, there's a kind of morbid fascination or macabre fascination with watching someone doing something really boring.
Yeah, I also think, the numbers obviously helps, right? If you released a video called I Counted to 100, nobody would watch it. But the fact that it's a huge number that's almost kind of inconceivable sort of helps. I mean, I remember when I was in journalism school, we always got told, if you're going to put a number on the cover, make sure it's a big one.
Yeah.
And it just sucks people in.
I have to take this moment to say that I actually did something a little similar to this.
Did you?
I said 10,000 times in a row.
On camera?
Oh, no, I did it when I was younger because there was a program about world records and someone had written into this thing called the Record Breakers and said that my teacher said 150 times in a row and asked the editor of the Guinness Book of World Records whether this was a world record. He said, no, it sounds a lot. There's no official record. And I was only 7 years old. And I said 10,000 times, wrote into the Record Breakers and said, I'm delighted to inform you I've shattered that record. And they wrote back and said, there's no official record, but this is certainly the most we've ever heard of. Now, I think it's unlikely that anyone ever broke that record.
Wow.
So, as far as I know, that record still stands. What a shame YouTube wasn't around to capture those magic moments.
Well, I mean, it is a shame YouTube wasn't around. You could have been the Mr. Beast of counting.
Well, sadly, I'm not. But this act of endurance was a formula he'd repeat over and over. Other videos, including reading every word in the dictionary.
Watching Jake Paul's rap video, It's Everyday Bro, for 10 hours straight. And alongside these endurance stunts, he's also making the kind of things that would appeal to teenage boys. And actually, the first time I heard of Mr. Beast was through my teenage cousins. He microwaved an iPhone. He wrapped himself in cling film. Kind of funny, silly, goofy stunts. After that counting video, however, Jimmy hit 1 million subscribers. And crucially, for his business model, it also brought him his very first brand deal. It was a company called Quid, which is an app for trading digital collectible cards. It gave him $10,000 for sponsorship. And what he did with that 10 grand would eventually change the course of his life.
Yeah. In fact, in the opening of his next video, he counts piles of cash and tells the audience, this is not my money. This is a new weekly series where I get companies to sponsor my videos and I give 100% of what they pay me away to random people. After he talks about Quid for a couple of minutes, we get to the heart of the video. He walks up to a homeless man who's holding a cardboard sign in the middle of a busy road. Jimmy hands him an envelope stuffed with $10,000. And at first, the man is in shock and disbelief. Then he hugs Jimmy. Jimmy talks to him. The man describes falling on hard times. It's sort of heartbreaking. It's warming. The video is low quality, but Jimmy comes across as, sweet and kind. And, that becomes a bit of a pattern or a kind of, if you like, an exemplar for some of the stuff he does in the future.
Yeah, and the video did resonate with people. So Jimmy did set about making more of this kind of content. He gave $1,000 to multiple homeless people. There are videos titled Tipping Uber Drivers 10 grand and tipping waitresses with real gold bars. And I think it's worth reflecting on exactly what the videos look like as well, because I think if you haven't actually watched Mr. Beast content, you might be listening to all this and thinking to yourself, I mean, he's basically just making television, but for YouTube. But actually, when you watch a Mr. Beast video, like a recent one involved sort of fake crashing a plane in the wilderness and getting people to survive for as long as possible. That is essentially a television show that probably has been done before.
Yeah.
But the Mr. Beast version of that is, rather than spending time dwelling on any of the characters, building up a rapport with the audience, like getting into their backstory, you don't know any of these people's names.
No.
They are just kind of characters in a Mr. Beast video, almost like video game NPCs in a sense.
Oh, that's interesting. Like non-player characters.
Exactly. So
Okay.
the stories don't really matter. What matters is how many of them survive, the numbers involved, the big cash prize. It's not really about telling stories as much as it is about the stunt itself.
Yeah, well, it worked because he's soon earning $100,000 a month from his channel through advertising and sponsorship, but he was ploughing those profits back into the content. By the end of 2018, he released a video boasting he'd given away a total of $1 million.
He was also starting to grow the business side of Mr. Beast, which was becoming more than just Jimmy himself. So he was hiring school friends to help him plan and film the content. They began appearing with him on camera. This kind of crew of mates is a very big part of the Mr. Beast kind of universe. And he was also professionalizing as a content creator. So he signed with a Dallas-based talent management and digital marketing agency. So he's kind of smartening up in a way.
It's interesting, this kind of, if you like, zoo of people he gets around him, the entourage, that becomes quite a big part of it. And to me, it reminded me of an earlier generation of this kind of stuff. Do you remember the Jackass series where it was basically a bunch of young men doing dumb stuff?
Yeah. Like, I think some of the old Jackass stunts were things like, we rode a shopping trolley into each other, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it was sort of quite high peril stuff, and a lot of people got injured in that. And obviously, we'll talk about some of the safety issues later. But there was also this charitable element, which I don't remember from Jackass, because he posted a video giving his mum $100,000 in cash. At first, she refused. But he said, if I don't give it to you, I don't have a viral video. And that's all important, of course. And she laughed and said, you're using me for views? To which he responded, yes, but you get money too, so we're both happy. And it was the equivalent of Sue's entire year's salary, so she retired and joined, can't beat him, join her son's burgeoning company.
Yeah, I mean, even from the start of Mr. Beast's career, when he's posting videos commenting on other YouTubers' videos, there's a real element of meta to all the stuff that he does.
Yes.
He knows that people are watching. He knows it's attention that makes the videos worth it. It was working because, he's in exponential growth. He's actually said the beauty of YouTube is double the effort isn't double the views, it's like 10 times. The first million subscribers you get will take years, but the second will come in a few months. So by the end of 2019, YouTube announced that a Mr. Beast video was the most popular of that year, which they measured in likes, and it was called Make This Video the Most Liked Video on YouTube, the whole meta thing, right? The video actually involves 7 young men being egged in various ways, and it got 11 million likes. So to put this all into context, Game of Thrones, one of the most successful television shows of all time, the finale got 19 million. Succession season 2 finale got 1 million.
And they got 11 million for people throwing eggs at each other.
Yeah, I mean, the disproportionate rate of investment to actual output, you have to admire it.
There were fewer dragons in the egging scenes.
Exactly.
And Mr. Beast also made the top 10 most viewed creators list, a staggering 2.2 billion total views, making him number 7 overall, and just shows what a massive shift we are seeing in the way content is consumed, created, young people moving away from legacy media. And I think I'm right in saying that in the latest broadcast figures, YouTube actually became the most watched channel on TV. And that's not on people just on their phones or on laptops. That is people watching YouTube on the TV set in the corner, because obviously smart TVs have apps and you can do that. So YouTube is now just a colossus, which other content creators are having to work with and put their content on to get to their audiences.
Yeah, you may very well be watching this content on YouTube,
Yes.
actually, which just goes to show how times have changed.
Yeah.
But by this point, Mr. Beast videos were very high production value. He said that they take months of prep. A lot of them take 4 to 5 days of relentless filming. There's a reason other people don't do what I do. And a single video was now costing him, on average, $300,000. The most expensive one was $1.2 million, $1 million of which was given to the contestant who could, as you can guess, keep his hand on a stack of cash for the longest amount of time. But Jimmy doesn't have to wait for a commissioner to greenlight his ideas and give him the money. You know, he doesn't have to hire a big crew. It's basically Jimmy and his friends filming mostly in Greenville, not Hollywood or London. So now we get to the coronavirus pandemic, which legacy media found very challenging. It's hard to go on a shoot when everything's on lockdown. Traditional television was even more expensive.
And with more people, especially kids, during the pandemic, sat at home in front of a screen, the viewership exploded. By the end of 2020, he had 50 million subscribers and was named Creator of the Year at the Streamy Awards, which are the Oscars of YouTube.
That year, he also launched another channel, Mr. Beast Philanthropy, and it became home for his more philanthropic videos like giving 20,000 shoes to kids in Africa and I adopted 100 dogs. That channel gives 100% of its ad revenue, merch sales and sponsorship to charitable causes.
Okay, but let's keep the total eyes on what Jimmy is actually earning at this point, because time and again, he stresses that he plows all this money back into his channel, saying money's a vehicle to do bigger videos, make better content. At the end of 2020, Forbes included him on their list of highest paid YouTube stars for the first time at number 2, straight in number 2, having made $24 million that year. So even if he's spending a large chunk of that on his content, it's pretty safe to say that at this point, Jimmy Donaldson, aka Mr. Beast, is a millionaire, age 22.
Well, let's take Mr. Beast from $1 million onto $1 billion. Like so many of our billionaires, Jimmy's first move was to diversify into the consumer market. So in 2020, he launched a company called Mr. Beast Burger as a ghost kitchen concept. You know, it allows fans to order branded meals through an app fulfilled by about 1,600 partner restaurants around the United States. So it's kind of like a modern day franchise system. He drives demand through his audience by talking about it. Other restaurants handle the production and shares in the profits. And a video of the launch event got 200 million views on his YouTube channel. You know, he's basically got his own billboard advertising system working for him here. And they sold over 1 million sandwiches in the very first couple of months. And within a year and a half, he'd made 100 million in revenue. So, you know, that's a good amount of money.
But it wasn't all plain sailing. Customers started complaining the food was disgusting, revolting. They were posting images of raw meat. And Jimmy told a fan on Twitter, the problem with Beast Burger is I can't guarantee the quality of the order. When working with other restaurants, it's impossible to control it, sadly. You couldn't have seen that coming. Jimmy sued the company Virtual Dining Concepts, who he'd partnered with to do all this. The lawsuit claimed the company has irreparably harmed his reputation. And it's interesting, for creators, they are the product, right? So their reputation is everything. So getting associated with disgusting burgers is a problem. The other company, Virtual Dining Concepts, countersued for $100 million, claiming Jimmy was trying to bully the company into a better deal. And actually, this legal battle is still ongoing, despite a judge urging them to settle it.
Well, when the burgers were flaming out, Jimmy pivoted to launch something different, a chocolate bar brand called Feastables. Have you ever tried this?
I haven't, but I have seen it pop up relentlessly in his videos. They waste no opportunity to promote it.
Well, the brand has quickly become dominant, so it accounts for roughly 70% of his revenue. In its second year, it secured deals like a jersey patch with the Charlotte Hornets, a sports team. It's also actually, in comparison to Beast Burgers, gained an unusually strong fan base. Supporters have organized supermarket displays, like they've gone into supermarkets and just like put a little display of the chocolate bars themselves.
So you have an army of promoters for your brand as well with this kind of business model, don't you?
You've got a beast army. Well, and then Jimmy expanded into Lunchly, which is a joint venture with other YouTubers, KSI and Logan Paul, which combines Feastables with their Prime drinks. I mean, as you can imagine, this product drew quite a lot of complaints.
I remember Prime drinks because
Yes.
there was a period when I was going into my local shop and they were selling out of this drink called Prime, and it was very expensive.
It was so expensive.
I couldn't believe that people. I was like, why? How on earth did this happen? Because I hadn't seen any advertising for it. I'm absolutely certain that I'm, explaining the reason now for something that I could not fathom at the time.
Yeah, it's all on YouTube being advertised to essentially kids. And, that was what the complaints were about. There were product quality issues. There were kind of criticism over the health claims. As you can imagine, like it's a chocolate bar and an energy drink, not exactly the kind of thing children should be consuming en masse. So, overall, there were wins and losers for Jimmy's business portfolio.
But back on YouTube, he was reigning supreme. By the end of 2021, he spent $3.5 million recreating the popular Netflix series Squid Game. And that was a massive TV phenomenon. Let's just explain for those who haven't seen that smash hit what it was about.
It was huge. So it's a Korean drama about a fictional game where people who are hard up in their luck compete for a huge cash prize. And they compete in these sort of games based on childhood games, things like
Tug of war.
Tug of War, for instance.
Yeah. Or
Twist-
grandma's footsteps when you have to walk when someone's not looking, and then when it turns around, if you're still moving. But if you mess up on this game, there are deadly consequences.
Yeah, exactly. So if you lose the game, you die. And the idea is to be the last person standing. So a massive hit, and originally intended to be a critique of capitalism.
Yeah, well, interesting, isn't it? So let's get on to that, because I think that we can have that very debate right here, because Jimmy took on 456 people to be the competitors, to compete for $456,000 across the same type of games that were on Squid Games. Although in this version, mercifully, people didn't die if they lost, but the video went mega viral. It currently has 900 million views. That's almost a billion. Insane numbers. And that video arguably was the thing that brought him to the attention or into the mainstream. Views across his channel doubled from the previous year, and he was now very much a celebrity. But more exposure meant more criticism.
Yeah, exactly. Because, like I said earlier, Squid Game, the television show, was about a critique of capitalism, of the kind of society that drives people to take part in such an extreme game at the expense of their lives. And a lot of people felt that Jimmy had completely missed the entire point of the original series. Mr. Beast's version turned it into an entertainment, into spectacle. It basically replicated the very thing that the show itself was describing.
Because it was basically a system which had left some people with nothing left to lose, and therefore would risk it all on remarkably small odds of gaining some pot of money at the end. And there was a kind of, as you say, late stage capitalism desperation about it, which meant to be a critique. But the derivative of it was insanely popular. It wasn't people saying, oh, I see what they're doing there, that's not for me, what a terrible route we're going down as a society. It's like, yes, I want in, especially in the one where I don't have to die.
Yeah, exactly. It reminds me a little bit of how the original book and movie American Psycho was meant to be a searing critique of toxic masculinity and was instead adopted by the very manosphere that it probably would have critiqued itself.
Yeah, gosh, good parallel.
Still, you can argue no one died in Mr. Beast's Squid Game.
It's consensual entertainment, and it's a lot of laughs. Jimmy himself dismissed some of these criticisms, saying the guy who made Squid Games, the show, literally said, I like these people recreating the show. What the Squid Game creator said was a little more nuanced. He said, I think all of it is very much in line with the capitalist society that is depicted in Squid Game. I actually think it enforces it and makes the message even greater. So there you go, amplifying the original point.
Well, Squid Game cost Mr. Beast millions to make, but it's also worth noting that he subsidizes all this more expensive content with cost-efficient gaming and reaction channels, which just feature him and his mates. It's also worth noting he achieved such a big global audience, all those millions of views, because his channels are dubbed in multiple languages.
I can attest to that because I was trying to watch some of it and I couldn't get it off the Korean translation. So it is, when I went to change it, it was in literally dozens of languages.
Yeah, Russian, Hindi, Spanish, Portuguese, French, Arabic, Japanese. He's got a kind of global reach. And at this point, there's more money than ever being made by content creators on YouTube as more viewers and advertisers choose this platform over traditional media. So in 2022, YouTube took in nearly $30 billion in ad revenue.
Wow. That year, Jimmy earned $54 million, including $32 million from ads across the channel, $9 million from sponsored content, and for the first time, Jimmy was the top earning YouTuber. Earnings like that put him even ahead of huge social media influencers like Kim Kardashian. We've done an episode on her. More traditional names like Angelina Jolie, Billie Eilish. And Jimmy said a lot of people still see YouTubers as a subclass of influencers. They still just don't truly understand the influence a lot of creators have.
Yeah, because Jimmy is not a glitzy, glamorous Kim Kardashian guy.
No.
He just looks like a regular guy. If you didn't watch Mr. Beast content, you probably would walk past him on the street.
Yeah, you could see him at a bus stop and you wouldn't stop and look twice.
I have to say, maybe this is a little bit harsh, but he's not the most charismatic guy on YouTube. There's a lot of people who comment quite regularly on how he doesn't appear to smile with his eyes.
Yeah. It's also, but I think going back to his childhood, there is something about the sort of, the lonely introvert who's bored off his trolley and trying to find something to literally soak up the time. I think that's quite an appealing thing for some people. And we didn't play the multi-millionaire because he said he's got, made 54 million in 1 year, but he said, I don't have access to any of my bank accounts. I have a chief financial officer and everything, but my mum is the one who has access to the master bank account. His mum's title is actually chief compliance officer, but many employees say she's effectively in charge of human resources, although a spokesperson says she's not. By 2024, he had 300 employees on his production team, plus 200 or more at Feastables. So it's certainly not a one-man band.
By this point, he'd established a holding company, Beast Industries. He remained founder, but he brought in professional executives to help him run the company, which was expanding, building huge new content facilities in Greenville. And this is interesting. Jimmy wants his hometown to become a content creator hub. The company's then president said, the biggest parallel I could draw is to Tyler Perry in Atlanta.
Yep.
We've done him on Good Bad Billionaire, the movie producer and mogul. Jimmy's creating his own studio system here, and new producers come to Greenville. They're given housing, good salaries, 3 months to prove themselves.
It's the way that people used to flock to the Paramount lot in Hollywood. They're flocking to Greenville.
Yeah, and the producer who worked for Mr. Beast has said, you get all these people in a town where there's not much else going on but the job. If you can show them you're a real believer in the Beast way of doing things, you are rewarded.
But in a cover interview with Jimmy, Time magazine reported that of the dozen former employees Time interviewed, most had no problem with Donaldson, but described a company culture that was toxic with a lot of bullying. A spokesperson for Mr. Beast said the company has high standards for performance and not everyone is best suited for this work.
Many of those employees signed NDAs and wouldn't go on the record with Time magazine. But some former employees have said that Mr. Beast saw itself as separate from the rest of the entertainment industry and sometimes didn't prioritize safety and work culture. They reported concerns over limited training, a resistance to hiring experts for stunts, which have included explosives, fast cars, heavy machinery. A spokesperson has said, safety is incredibly important and taken very seriously, and medics and experienced professionals tailored to the needs of production are on every set, adding the company is OSHA compliant.
Yeah.
That is a set of safety rules.
Yeah, boilerplate statement over there. So let us go then on to Jimmy's biggest and perhaps most controversial piece of entertainment to date. At the end of 2024, Beast Games was released, created, hosted and exec produced by Jimmy. The premise is 2,000 people competing for $5 million in prize money, essentially just a bigger version of Squid Game. But instead of doing what he'd done his whole career, which is release this independently on YouTube channel, this was commissioned by and released on Amazon Prime. This is a big change.
Yeah, I mean, previously he kind of prided himself on being separate to the entertainment industry. And, you know, while Amazon Prime is relatively new as a streaming service, compared to MrBeast, it operates a lot more like a legacy media channel. The appeal for Amazon is obviously really clear. Jimmy is incredibly young. He's got a really loyal audience. But Jimmy was also getting a kind of new audience who are older, more traditional. And he said, you can tell a phenomenal story in a 30-minute YouTube video, but with an extended series, you can get more people invested in the brand. And also there was another reason that it appealed to Jimmy, because Amazon paid really well.
Yep, it is a multi-trillion-dollar company, and Amazon paid around $100 million for the first season of Beast Games. Staggering amount of money for a single season of unscripted content, right? From a YouTuber who's never made, you know, mainstream TV. But for Amazon, a $2.8 trillion company, $100 million is actually pretty cheap.
Yeah, drop in the ocean. Beast Games was filmed in a gigantic football stadium in Las Vegas, where the 2,000 contestants lived for days, sleeping on the grass. They had to surrender their phones and medication while competing in physically demanding challenges, sometimes staying awake for up to 3 nights. More than a dozen participants told the New York Times that they experienced inadequate food or medical care. They cited long gaps between meals, delayed access to medication, even clean underwear.
Oh, dear. Some competitors also suffered injuries from the challenges, which were very physical, and there were some hospitalizations. One contestant said, "We were treated horribly. They took on this challenge of 2,000 competitors. They should have known they needed an enormous crew to handle this correctly." A spokesperson for MrBeast said contestants have been offered 3 meals a day. The shoot was complicated by the CrowdStrike incident that crashed millions of Windows systems, plus extreme weather and other unexpected logistical and communications issues. They added that MrBeast had started a formal review and taken steps to ensure that we learn from this experience, while Amazon MGM Studios declined to comment.
Beast Games opened the floodgates to more discussion, more reporting online about whether MrBeast was a force for good in the world or something way more sinister.
Yeah, people starting to question his philanthropic motivations. One of the videos he released on his philanthropy channel caused criticism across newspaper columns and social media, called 1,000 Blind People See for the First Time, and Jimmy arranged for 1,000 people to have cataract surgery on their eyes. I've seen this, and there's a whole series of people peeling off the bandages and they can see for the first time. It's quite clear to me, watching bits of that quite a lot of these people were, I would say, socioeconomically challenged.
Yeah.
Did you get that sense?
Yes. Yeah, there's a real sense of, I mean, inadvertently, and I don't think he intended to do this when making the video, it is an indictment of the American healthcare system.
Yeah.
That all these people who had really good reasons for wanting to see their kids, you know, just couldn't get the access to healthcare or have the money to fix themselves.
Yeah. It's a tricky one, isn't it? Because I imagine that almost every single one of those 1,000 would be very grateful for the procedure. Yeah. When questioned about this, Jimmy said, he's defined about this, I know myself, I don't have anything to prove to anyone. I think what I've done speaks for itself.
Yeah, I mean, on one hand, so the advertising revenue from MrBeast's philanthropy means they can deliver millions of meals to people, millions of trees are planted, millions of pounds of trash removed from the ocean. These are all things they say they've done. You can also see from the way that Jimmy and his friends who help out hosting the video, they seem genuinely touched to be in contact with these people who are seeing for the first time. But something about the MrBeast formula of fast cuts and high emotion and numbers and spectacle when applied to something like some people's disability.
Yeah.
You know, for a lot of people, this philanthropy just feels exploitative.
Exploitative is interesting. I wonder whether this generation of YouTube viewers thinks differently about what exploitation means. They think differently about what privacy means, what of your personal details you're prepared to share. They feel differently about what selling out, if you like, means. All of those concepts are, slightly different, I think.
Yeah, I mean, you talked about how MrBeast content is sort of similar to Jackass.
Yeah.
But I really struggle to think that Jackass people like, Johnny Knoxville would feel comfortable at any point doing a stunt, turning to camera and say, this video was funded by Verizon 5G internet. They would never do that. They would think that was deeply uncool.
Yeah.
But, MrBeast exemplifies a generation where that isn't such a big deal. We've been talking about these concerns, but it's worth flagging that a lot of the fan base just doesn't seem to care about this kind of stuff. You know, season 1 of Beast Games became one of Amazon Prime Video's most viewed shows. Amazon's renewed it for 2 seasons. Meanwhile, Jimmy's own channel has continued to grow. By 2025, he became the first YouTuber to hit 400 million subscribers, and Beast Industries that year was valued at $5 billion.
Amazing.
So Jimmy owns about half of that company, making him a billionaire worth about $2.5 billion at the age of 27 years old.
It's astonishing. It's just incredible, and it's rapid. It sounds exhausting because every moment you've got to outdo yourself. That's one of the things, isn't it? That everything's got, he pours it back in to do bigger and bolder and more grabby and sort of more controversial and more eyeballs and then have to do it all over again. It's kind of, you know, having to sort of keep the beast, if you like, having to feed the beast in itself is a full-time job.
Yeah, I mean, there's a kind of horror film in that, isn't there?
Yeah.
Where kind of Mr. Beast stands and slowly goes insane trying to keep up.
Age 27, Jimmy Donaldson is a billionaire. Let's now take him beyond $1 billion.
Well, interestingly, there's actually some debate as to whether Jimmy is actually a billionaire or not.
Okay.
I know. So his status...
Why are we bothering with this then?
Well, I mean, this is interesting because some people say he is and some people say he isn't. So this kind of billionaire status has kind of gradually emerged into the picture. So Fortune have outright named him a billionaire because of this, because of his company, as they began valuing Beast Industries. Forbes, however, which we use quite a lot on this show, haven't formally updated his net worth to over $1 billion.
Okay. It's worth noting so many of our billionaires are declared so on paper. They don't have money in the bank. It's because of the value of the stake they have in a company. Time and again, we've seen billionaires declare how cash poor they are. Even people like Elon Musk or Gymshark's Ben Francis, because they're saying, I can't go and spend this money. It's in the shares in my company. Jimmy's particularly insistent on this. He says, technically, everyone watching this video has more money than me in their bank account. If you take away the equity value of my company, as in what's worth my company's worth, that doesn't buy me McDonald's in the morning.
You know, Jimmy still has grand ambitions, though, because Mr. Beast, and this is truly kind of remarkable, is becoming a banker. So Beast Industries has expanded into financial services by acquiring Step, which is a banking-style platform aimed at teens and young adults. There's no age requirement to sign up for it, with millions of users. So this move kind of places Jimmy in a much more tightly regulated space. Yeah. He has ambitions to expand into lending, potentially cryptocurrency. Obviously, marketing crypto to children is not without any controversy. Even Senator Elizabeth Warren has formally questioned Jimmy in a letter, and a spokesperson for Beast Industries has said the company's main motivation was to improve the financial future of the next generation, adding the company is reviewing all existing offerings and marketing to make sure they meet very high quality standards and comply with applicable laws.
It's interesting that because you've seen quite a few companies try and break into the financial services area with particularly sort of younger branded things like Monzo, like Revolut, taking on the old banking establishment. What some of them have found is that having a banking license and going into financial services is incredibly tightly regulated, and it's not as freewheeling as as some other industries. So we will watch that one with interest. Also, once you get finance involved, scandal is never usually far away.
Oh, yeah.
Bad things can happen quickly.
Well, it's financial journalists like you start sniffing around.
Exactly. So it's time to score Jimmy Donaldson, Mr. Beast, on our billionaire categories. And this is a bit of fun where we score people from 0 to 10 on categories including wealth, controversy, power, and legacy. So let's start with wealth.
Well, probably worth $2.5 billion, not a clear consensus by any means. But, you know, having said that, he's still only 27.
Yeah.
So he's got a long way to go.
Yeah, he's explicitly said profit is not the goal. Expansion is. Money is a tool for him to accomplish his goal of dominating YouTube.
Yeah, I wonder if actually when we're scoring him on wealth, we should take into account the fact that so much of his content is about wealth. It kind of makes sense in that way why he's gone into banking, because all of his content is so driven by numbers and money.
Yeah.
It's almost like a children's book, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where it's like, so-and-so went to the dollar store, then we went to the $10 store. You know, it's almost like you're teaching children to count.
Yes. Okay. So wealth is actually plays a part in the draw, doesn't it, on some of this stuff, compete for $5 million. And he's made a lot very young, so I'm going to give him a 5.
Oof, I mean, I think I'll give him slightly more. I'll give him a 6 out of 10.
Okay.
Because I feel like he exemplifies a very different kind of approach to wealth.
Yeah.
Maybe one that we haven't really seen on the show before.
That's true.
His entire life is about acquiring big numbers and big things,
Yes.
but not in the sense that he's buying a Maserati.
Yeah.
He's just peddling that message to people.
But almost in a sort of frivolous way. It's important and frivolous at the same time. It's a weird combination. Okay, 5 for me, 6 for you. Controversy?
I mean, there's been quite a few, concerns about safety and labor practices at the company, all those complaints that were raised after the filming of Beast Games.
And like anyone who lives by the online sword, sometimes you can die by it. People have dug up stuff, comments he's made in the past, some racist, some homophobic language he's used in the past.
Yeah, he's since apologized for them. A spokesperson has said he was a teenager. Like many kids, he used inappropriate language while trying to be funny.
But he's not a sort of rage baiter, is he, in that sense, or a kind of someone who's trying to mobilise sort of racist or homophobic feelings in order to generate rage content and views?
No.
Okay. And of course, the criticisms of the philanthropy stuff as being charity porn. Some people have called it poverty as spectacle. You could call it, which he's defiant about. So I think he's a pretty controversial character. I think that to someone of my age, he's a kind of fascinating and controversial character in a way that he probably isn't to his own audience.
Yeah, that is true. I mean, if you've grown up watching Mr. Beast, you probably are able to brush off these criticisms quite easily because you're well and truly buried in the universe there.
Okay.
All of this stuff makes sense to you.
So because I'm older than you, I have to give a higher score for controversy than you.
That's right.
So I'm going to give him a 7.
I'll give him a 6 out of 10.
Okay, fine. Order is restored. We got that one right.
Next, we come on to Power, which is an interesting one because you could look at the numbers that Mr. Beast pulls in and say, this guy is bigger than any platform, any media channel on the face of the planet.
I think if you went into the offices of senior media executives around the world, they would be terrified of Mr. Beast. He embodies something a bit bigger, which is the incursion that things like YouTube have made in traditional media landscape. And therefore, in terms of power, they would say that what he represents is changing their entire industry and is massively powerful. I'm going to give him high numbers for Power. I'm going to give him an 8 for Power.
Wow. I think I'm going to give him an 8 as well.
Okay. And then on Legacy, this is an interesting one because one wonders whether some of these famous stunts that he's done for Mr. Beast will just be like, I don't know, are they going to stand the test of time?
Who knows? I mean, he's certainly going to go down in the history books for having been the person to understand YouTube and juice the algorithm in a way that not very many content creators have done successfully or ever since.
Yeah.
So I think his legacy is probably going to be pretty high. But in terms of an artistic legacy, I mean, is anybody going back and rewatching any of the videos time and time again like they do with any kind of treasured childhood films? I don't really think so.
I'm trying to think who the Mr. Beast of the last generation was, and I'm struggling to find that there is such a person, really.
No, I don't think it existed because something like YouTube didn't exist.
No, fair enough. Okay, Legacy. I think the jury's out on that. I'm going to go straight down the middle and say 5.
I'm going to score him slightly higher, I think, because he was, I guess, one of the first content creators to truly go viral in a way that made everyone sit up and take notice.
People say he's the Mozart of the attention economy, so will he have the same legacy as Mozart, I wonder?
Will they be playing Mr. Beast videos to small babies and toddlers to make them smarter? I don't actually think so. But I'm still going to give him a high point for legacy. I think I'm going to give him a 6 out of 10.
So those are our scores. What do you think? Is he good, bad, or just another billionaire? Let us know what you think. Email goodbadbillionaire, that's one word, at bbc.com, or drop us a text or WhatsApp to 001 917 686 1176 and tell us what you think.
And don't forget to include your name, as we may read it out on a future episode.
For example, James from Florida emailed us, "Hi, Simon and Zing. Love your podcast and I listen during my evening neighbourhood walks here in Central Florida. It makes my daily 7,000 step target go by much faster. Glad to hear it. I just finished the episode on Rupert Murdoch's story and found the quote about 90% of the best deals are offered to the top 2% quite striking. Nobody's been calling me with deals and now I know why."
Same.
Yes.
He goes on to say, following that, I was wondering if you could look into whether Dolly Parton is a legitimate billionaire. We love her upbeat personality, her positive approach to life, and she scored big on her rags to riches journey. We even visited Dollywood during a recent visit to Tennessee. Great place, highly recommended. Oh, I wish I could go. I have shared your podcast with many friends and family members. Thank you, James. So once you reach 1 billion listeners, I'll be looking forward to that signed autograph card. All the best from Central Florida. Keep the shows rolling out.
Well, thanks for that. And we looked into this. Unfortunately, Dolly is not yet a billionaire. She's worth around $500 million. So she's halfway there.
But there's still time, Dolly. Working 9 to 5. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel so you never miss an episode.
I wonder if Mr. Beast will film an episode of him watching this episode about himself.
I really hope so. And also watch this episode for 500 hours straight.
Yes.
That's the Mr. Beast way of doing it.
And if you're watching in the UK and would like to listen to even more episodes of GBB, Good Bad Billionaire, follow the link in the description.